Hello and welcome to another edition of the Stench of Truth. Please pardon the background noise, that's my air conditioning, it's quite warm here. I just want to make a note on the Sandusky trial, which is over. He did not take the stand, the jury has been sequestered, and one of Sandusky's adopted children, an adopted son, has now come forward and said that he has been molested by Sandusky himself. I found it rather cold and calculating that his wife, while certainly if she could very well be completely out of the equation and have no knowledge of what her husband did. That's certainly entirely possible in my mind. But what I find rather cold and calculating is her attempt to demonize the children, who are now adults of course, by categorizing them in various ways. Now, I wonder if she will have anything to say about the adopted son coming forward and alleging the same thing about her husband. Now, it should be noted that the jury is completely filled with people who have direct and indirect connections to Penn State, so I can't understand how that could possibly be from a prosecutorial standpoint that any of these people would be on the jury, but there you have it. So is it possible that this thing might end up coming back with a hung jury? I don't think they can, I don't think that they could get away with a not guilty in this one because of all of the stuff, and now because of the son coming out. I don't think that they could get away with a not guilty, but I do think they could get away with a mistrial, a hung jury that can't come to a conclusion. And then that, of course, throws the ball back into the court of the state and to decide whether or not they want to go through retrying it. So keep on the lookout for that. And once again, the entire idea of child molestation and pedophilia within these institutions is a criminal, sinister, nefarious, absolutely egregious and horrifying fucking reality. And that is why everything needs to be kept as quiet as fucking possible. And if it ever does make it into any kind of trial or anything like that, it has to be downplayed, it has to not be talked about very much, and you never, ever, ever see in the fucking media the possibility that there might be other predators within the same fucking organization, which systematically aided and covered up for this fucker who is on trial now. Systematically aided and covered up for by high officials in Penn State. And I guarantee you the same exact activity was going on in Second Mile, and that's why they dissolved. So they would not have to face this kind of fucking scrutiny. Because I'm sure if you examine their internal memoranda, you would find the same kind of things that were coming out of the high officials at Penn fucking State. So don't be surprised if it's a mistrial, people. And then it would be really interesting to see what happens at that point. Now, I'd also like to comment on the recent appearance of JPMorgan Chase head Jamie Dimon before the Senate Banking Committee with his presidential cufflinks, who, after all of the fawning, the crawling on their bellies, and the ass-kissing fucking boot-licking cocksuckers in the fucking Senate fucking Banking Committee that's supposed to oversee the fucking banks, after all their ass-licking, ass-wiping, fucking tongue-kissing fucking bullshit, a few softball questions thrown his way, and Jamie Dimon is happily offering his services to the government to help them with their monetary policy, because he is such a kind and caring individual. Obviously, since the senators were falling all over themselves to be the first to give him a fucking hand job. And this harkens back to the grand old days of the founder of JPMorgan Chase, one J.P. Morgan himself, who owned the United States Treasury in the early 1900s. And one can see that things never really do fucking change. So if you ever had any doubt before, who is pulling the strings of the fucking government in this motherfucking shithole corporation we call the United fucking States of America, look no further than that fucking ridiculous goddamn display put on at the Senate. With these people lining up to lick Jamie Dimon's asshole, rather than grilling him about his trading policies, rather than digging into his derivatives. You want to know why? Because he's supporting all of their campaigns with massive amounts of money, but also because JPMorgan is intricately involved in the entire derivative Ponzi scheme, which everybody is intent upon keeping from collapsing. So he thinks he can call his terms and decide what he wants and how he wants to act, and that's exactly what he's doing, and they are kowtowing and falling all over themselves to be the first to be walked upon by the great Jamie Dimon. So I don't want to hear anybody else talking about all these other influences controlling the corporation of the United States. There's your man. And who is he? He's a fucking banker. He runs a fucking bank. It's the fucking banks. It's where the money is. It's the banks. The banks. The banks. The fucking banks. And for those people who say it's the Federal Reserve, they're part of the problem. But who owns the fucking Federal fucking Reserve? The fucking banks that are in the fucking system. They own it. They fucking run it. So, I don't want to hear any equivocation. The banks are behind it. That's where the money is. That's where the wealth has been taken and stolen and shredded and lost. That's where all the debts are going to. That's who everybody owes. That's where all the money needs to go. That's where the debt lies. So if you want to talk about obligations, debt, even sovereign debt and everything else, look no further than the banks, because they are the beginning and the fucking end. It's as simple as that. And just lastly, I want to mention two things. Number one, my new candidate for Romney's vice presidential pick is Jeb Bush. More in the news lately, more focusing on his supposed connection to the Hispanic Latino community, and of course that is a great Romney weakness. So that's my new favorite right now as a vice presidential candidate with Romney. And I'll say this right now, just like I said before the year 2000 election, if there's a Bush on the fucking ticket, that is the winning fucking ticket. So if Jeb is selected as the running mate for Romney, we will have a Romney president in 2012. End of discussion. And that's the end of that. So if he chooses Jeb, welcome President Romney, the Danite asset stripper who will slice and dice the entirety of the rest of the corporation of the United States into smaller, balkanized pieces that he will sell off to the highest bidder. And never mind the death and destruction he leaves in his wake. Do not take this as an endorsement of Obama, because you know I can't stand that motherfucking Wall Street cocksucker. Thank you. So, lastly, but certainly not least, I want to point out two things to you that I think that has been missed by some other commentators on the idea of drones. Of course, we see the drones have been unleashed, as Andy Colvin says, in the year 2012. And of course now we are seeing up to 30,000 drones may be authorized for flying in the skies of the United States, used by both police and private entities. Now, there was a story that was discussed in relation to drone use in the U.S. And it came to light partly because of the downing of a drone into a lake in, I think it was Maryland. That is that the military routinely trains their drone operators on drone operation by operating them over the skies of the United States. And in interviews, they talked to military personnel and they described what it is that they do. Now, they might go flying out on a training mission and be flying above a highway, and they will pick a vehicle out of the cars on the highway, and they will lock onto it, and they will use that as their quote-unquote target. And they will follow it and trace its activities, etc., etc. Already, an egregious use of military within the borders of the United States, and a gross violation of your rights, which you don't actually have. But here's the thing. We have also heard that any material, any evidence, any gathered data that is collected by the military or the intelligence agencies can and is being shared with police forces around the country. So the way I see it, a police drone does not need to be activated in your area in order for the police to be spying on you. Because the military could be training with a drone, which just happened to pick your vehicle to train with as a target. And then they follow you around and see you engaging in some activity which might be regarded as terroristic. And then they could simply call up the local police and tell them to go and arrest you. And of course, that is exactly what would happen. No need for a police drone. But you see the scary scenario here. It's already happening. Therefore, all of this has already occurred. The military and intelligence agencies have already told the police about Joe Blow driving his truck down to the local shop and picking up manure and then riding over and getting heating oil. Might be totally benign, but I'm sure the police picked the fucker up because some military motherfucker was watching them with a fucking drone that they have no fucking business doing, no right fucking doing, but they're doing it because they do whatever they want. Because this is a corporation of the United States. So if the CEO says do it, they do it. He says jump, they ask how high. So this is the deadly thing that's going on right now. This sort of interplay between the military and the police forces in this country, which is completely and totally, it's just beyond words to describe the kind of invasions of your privacy and the complete lack of regard for any kind of civil rights or the idea even of civil rights existing. So we have moved beyond the idea of even a sham set of civil rights or a charade of caring about individual liberties or freedom or anything of this kind. So we have now dropped all pretext in that regard. So, live it up. Act like the drone that you are. The drone yourself. The drone in the hive of the corporate United States of America, which now has decided that they need to engage in a reduction of force here at home. So that means layoffs. The only way you can be laid off from the corporation of the United States is to be sent to the privately run prison industrial system or killed. Thank you. Good night.